All good things must come to an end. Mel Kiper and young Fielding are here to break down all of the round one of Mel Kiper's final mock draft of 2025. That is coming up. Plus, we respond to your questions, your takes, and your draft dreams live as First Draft starts right now. Hello again, everybody. Delighted that you are with us. As always, we are live twice every week. Every Monday and Thursday afternoon, live on the NFL on ESPN YouTube channel, wherever you get your podcast. Plus, we're on ESPN2 every Monday like today with the legends Mel Kiper and Field Yates. I am Greeny. And just very quickly, before we dive into Mel's first round here, round one of his final mock. Mel, you've been doing this a really long time. It feels to me, and I host the morning show, of course, on ESPN Get Up every day, and that's where I'm getting this feel from. Every year, the draft sort of has a tone. It has one thing that dominates all of the conversation. Last year it was all the quarterbacks. Lately, frequently, it seems to be the variety of quarterbacks and where will they all go. It overwhelmingly feels to me right now like the focal point of this draft is Shedeur Sanders. How early does he go? Where does he go? Does he become the player who slips? I feel like so much of the conversation is there. Does that feel right to you, Mel Kiper?
It does, and I think 5 Jacksonville is interesting because everybody's had Mason Graham there the entire process. What do they do with Liam Cohen, the new head coach coming in? There's been talk about tight end, but they love Brenton Strange, right? Kid was drafted in the second round out of Penn State not long ago. Will the Raiders take Ashton Ginty at 6? He's been thought about as a Raider for a long time. Will that actually happen? What do the Jets do at 7? Because that will be impacted by an Armand Membou, right? Or a Tyler Warren. So it's going to be a lot of intrigue, I think, from 5 to 7, Greeny, but there's no question when you have a quarterback like Shedeur Sanders with the name Sanders, and you have teams needing a quarterback desperately, they're going to go for the more highly rated guy over Shedeur, and you have New Orleans now with a quarterback issue with Derek Carr sitting there at 9, and you have Pittsburgh sitting there at 21. We're talking about maybe he'd fall in their lap, but now New Orleans gets a little bit of an issue going here because of Carr's situation, right? Yeah. Do they take him at 9? Does somebody trade ahead of New Orleans? Shedeur Sanders, everybody's all over the place on Greeny, and Field knows this. Yep. Some like him, don't love him. Some didn't even see him as a first rounder. Yep. You know, Shedeur is going to be certainly one of the major wild cards we've seen in a long time because there's so much mixed opinion. I'm high on him, so I can't understand the negativity. But when I really thought about it this weekend, I said, okay, when people are saying he doesn't have this, this, and this, I get it. You can't change this, and this. He's 6'1.5", 212. He doesn't have a rocket arm. He's never going to run 4.6. You can't change that, okay? Yeah. But you can also say that every other important thing that quarterbacks never really are able to grasp and never get better at, which is decision-making, accuracy, some do, some don't. Decision-making, some do, some don't, right? In terms of hanging tough in the pocket, people say he took too many sacks. Did you ever watch him play? Did you ever see, and a quarterback's, the idea of a quarterback is to make plays, okay? To move a team down the field, okay? You got to try to make a play when you're feeling pressure from guys who are unblocked, okay? Unblocked. Okay, at the snap, unblocked, blown blocks, time and time again. So for Shedeur, I defend him. Not many people, guys, not many people that I've heard, if any, have been as high on Shedeur as I am. I don't think anybody is. Have you found him great? Have you found anybody great that likes Shedeur as much as I do? Have you feel? Nope. I don't think so. No, it's hard for me to sit here and understand why people don't see him as even a first-round draft choice. That makes absolutely no sense to me.
Yeah, I've got a mid-first-round grade on Shedeur, so I still see him as a first-round pick. But some of the things that you were talking about, Mel, are big concerns in the eyes of some people. You talk about the sacks taken last year. One of the biggest criticisms that I hear frequently from people that evaluated him and also in watching him myself is, in the pocket, how much sense does he have? Does he try to wander away or drift away from pressure rather than just getting rid of the football for an incompletion? Those are the kind of habits he'll have to break at the NFL level. But to go all the way back to where we started here with Greeny's question, I do have to pull the curtain back a little bit here on a voicemail that I received around 4:50 last Thursday afternoon, Greeny. I was wrapping up NFL Live that day. Mel, I think, was tuned into the Orioles, so didn't have NFL Live on. I get a call from Mel Kiper, which I am unfortunately unable to take while on the air. And he leaves a voicemail because Mel is the best, and he still does that. I actually appreciate voicemails. Call me old school. I open up the voicemail, and actually I called Mel back after the show. I didn't even listen to the voicemail yet. I happened to check it later. And the voicemail was, and I'll give you the brief version, Greeny. Hey, young Fielding, Phone call, 6:30, you and me. We're going to go through Shedeur Sanders for 4 hours. That should about cover it. We will then take it and send it to every television station in America, and we're good for 2 weeks. Because as Greeny has said, every show wants to talk about Shedeur Sanders and where he will land. And frankly, Greeny, I understand it.
Well, let's see where he goes in Mel's first round of his final draft. Last time out here, I should say, we ran through Fields' mock draft 4.0. You can go over to the NFL on ESPN YouTube channel to check that out. You can scan the QR code that is on your screen to access the entire first draft YouTube playlist. And so let's dive into Mel's final mock. I am delighted to say that the mock draft, Mel Kiper's final one of 2025, is now officially open. So it is my pleasure to declare the mock draft officially open. The pick is in. All right, let's dive into it here with the number one pick. This is not a surprise. Mel has the Titans taking Cam Ward, quarterback Miami. At number 2, the Cleveland Browns selecting Travis Hunter, the ridiculously versatile superstar Heisman winner out of Colorado. With number 3, the third pick in 2025 mock draft, Mel Kiper 4.0, the New York Giants select Abdul Carter, linebacker, Penn State. Got a little bit of Micah Parsons in him here. And I've got a tweet from Zay that says Abdul should be the first pick, hands down. Mel, your thoughts?
Well, first pick, I guess he is number 1 on some boards. He's number 1 on boards. I'm having number 2, really 1A to Travis Hunter. Travis has been number 1 since August. So you can argue Abdul Carter. I get it. He's been number 2 for a long time on that board because he is an attacker off the edge. And when you have the ability to bend and you have the ability to produce like he did this year after he was moved from off ball to outside, sure. Yeah, why wouldn't the Giants want him? When you can get the best player on your board at pick number 3, it overrides even a quarterback, okay? And that's where Shedeur comes into play here. Do you take Shedeur Sanders or do you take Abdul Carter? Best player versus positional value at quarterback. Again, they may try to get back into the first round. Who knows where Shedeur is going to go? But I think Abdul Carter, if you're going to take the highest rated player, and you're picking 3 to get the best player on your board, would be phenomenal, Field, if that worked out that way, and it looks like it will.
Yeah, and Mel, people need to get over the idea that, like, oh, the Giants are already pretty well stocked at pass rusher. Who cares? Listen, this team has the 3rd overall pick in the draft for a reason. They stink, all right? Yeah, they had a good pass rush last year. There's no such thing as having too good of a pass rush, and if at some point they have too many good pass rushers, you know what they'll do? They'll trade one of them for a king's ransom. The Giants must take Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, assuming that one of the 2 is available, which, of course, almost certainly one of the 2 of them will be available with the Titans locked in on Cam Ward. To me, since we all believe the Giants are not going to take a quarterback at number 3, this sets up as the easiest pick in the draft. You take the leftover of the 2 premium non-quarterbacks. Those who believe that Abdul Carter is the best player in the draft, Greeny, I think feel this way. They have certainty that he will become a great pass rusher. Those same people are dubious that Travis Hunter will either become a great wide receiver or become a great corner, and flat out don't think he'll be able to play enough on both sides of the ball to be a dual threat. I think we're kind of nitpicking here. Mel and I both team Travis Hunter as a number 1 overall player in the draft, but make no mistake about it. The gap from 1 to 2 is minimal. The gap from 2 to 3, quite large.
So the comparison of Abdul Carter is going to be made to Micah Parsons for a variety of reasons. They wore the same jersey number at Penn State, and Carter was really good in the playoff. Not that Parsons was. Parsons didn't even play his final year of college because of COVID. But is that an apt comparison? NFL people or NFL fans, Mel, like to draw a comparison. Micah Parsons might be the best defensive player in the whole league. Is Carter that level of good?
They look very similar, don't they? And the thing is about Abdul Carter, he had already played and showed what he could do off the ball, and he showed that for 2 years. He showed it where you can, if Thibodeau and Burns, they're the guys off ball. He played it for 2 full years. He moved off the edge, and he had a phenomenal year. Doubled his sack total, doubled his tackles for loss numbers. He showed he could do it anywhere on the football field. Okay, as you said, Micah didn't play that final year with the COVID year. So Abdul Carter coming in, I know the foot injury that people talk about doesn't seem to be a problem moving forward. So for Abdul Carter and the Giants, yes, you go that route. My thing's always been with the Giants, who is going to be that young quarterback brought in? That's going to be the issue as we move past this pick for the Giants, as will be for the Cleveland Browns. Who is going to be that young quarterback that they identified? Yep. Not only they identify, but they're able to get. Because you can identify one and say, that's our guy. Who says you're going to get him? There's also some other teams that may be interested in that player as well. So the young quarterback brought in for both Cleveland and the Giants is going to be as interesting as any picks in the draft.
I would agree, Greeny. Just to go back to the Parsons versus Abdul Carter comparison, if it's not Micah Parsons, who is the apt comparison for Abdul Carter? 6'3", 245 coming out of college for Micah Parsons. 6'3", 250 coming out of college for Abdul Carter. Yeah, Micah's a better player, and if Abdul Carter even comes close to Micah Parsons, he is worth the number 3 overall pick 10 days out of 10. Getting to that level is obviously a high ceiling to reach. That being said, the makings of that kind of player are there. The rare first step explosiveness. These guys are like cheetahs chasing quarterbacks. They smell blood from a mile away and they just hunt these opposing quarterbacks. 12 sacks this past year for Abdul Carter is a very important number. We will see guys who are drafted in the first round this year that would do anything to have that kind of production that Abdul Carter had this past season. So yeah, it's going to take some good fortune to get to the Micah Parsons level, but I think as far as starting point comparisons go, it's a very reasonable and relevant one.
Yeah, and the reason why you got to take him, the last thing I'll say, and we'll end this pick right now, is the quarterbacks in the division. When you got to chase, you saw him chase. He can run down, you said cheetah, he'll run down anybody. Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, you got to track down, right? And then you got Dak Prescott, veteran, outstanding quarterback. When you're in a division with those kinds of quarterbacks, you got to stop them. You got to contain them. And Abdul Carter's job will be to do exactly that. Chase Daniels down, chase Hurts down, and prevent the Eagles and Washington from doing the kind of damage on offense they've been able to do. So it makes perfect sense, mainly because of the great player he is and the versatility he has. But when you're dealing with those quarterbacks, that's why you need a player like Carter.
A lot of people believe he's the best player in this draft. To get him at 3, the Giants would look good. Let's go on. At number 4, Mel has the Patriots taking Will Campbell, the tackle out of LSU. At number 5, Jacksonville, the defensive tackle Mason Graham. At number 6, the Raiders taking Ashton Jeanty, sensational running back out of Boise State. The 7th pick is in. I'm listening closely. The New York Jets select offensive tackle Armand Membou, who was the star, the breakout star of the Combine and opened everybody's eyes, and we hope will become, the Jet fans hope will become a plug-and-play right tackle for years to become. I did not mean we. Well, I guess I sort of meant we.
You deserve to say we as far as I'm concerned.
I let a little bit of a we into the conversation there without meaning to. No, I do not have a mouse in my pocket, to quote some who would be tough on that. And then with the 8th pick and then Mel's mock, he's got the Panthers selecting Jalen Walker. So let's take a quick look back at where we have 1 through 8 now, and through this pick here, going over it again, the quick look at where we stand so far in the first round of Mel Kiper's final mock draft. He has the Titans taking Cam Ward. He has the Browns taking Travis Hunter. He has the Giants taking Abdul Carter. He has the Patriots taking Will Campbell, and then Mason Graham, Ashton Jeanty, Armand Membou, and Jalen Walker to the Panthers. We are just getting underway. That was really only discussion on one pick. We have so much more of Mel's final round 1 as we continue on First Draft in just a moment. We are back on First Draft with Mel and Field. I am Greeny, and it is getting interesting. We have gone through the first quarter of round 1 with Mel's final mock draft so far. We're up to pick number 9, the New Orleans Saints, and this is where everyone is going to lean closer to the television as Roger Goodell walks out there to make his pick. Louis Riddick, with some news this weekend that the Saints had a quarterback situation with Derek Carr in a shoulder. Louis Riddick tweeted that 9th pick is going to be all kinds of interesting. And Deion Sanders, a.k.a. Coach Prime, tweeted those eyeballs, meaning he's keeping a close eye on the situation. And so, with the 9th pick in Mel's final mock of 2025, the New Orleans Saints do indeed select Shedeur Sanders, quarterback, Colorado. Mel.
Well, Lewis is a little late to that party on the Saints saying they're going to be interesting. I mean, are you kidding me? We've been saying Saints have been interesting for a month now. They're interesting because even with Derek Carr, what are they going to look at a quarterback? Remember back in the day, Greeny? It seems like back in the day, I had Jaxson Dart going there, right? And one of my mocks early on. And I had Shedeur Sanders going there in this terms of mock, the 3.0, 4.0. When you look at what they need, they are a team that fits Shedeur Sanders because of the dome. We talked about that all the time. You want to criticize his arm? I don't, but if you want to, the dome is going to help. Who else played in that dome? Drew Brees. What did they criticize about Drew coming at his arm? What did they say after he hurt his shoulder? His arm. We can't take him at Miami. You got to go get Culpepper because we don't want him. And he ended up in New Orleans in a dome and became a great quarterback and won a Super Bowl. So for me, Shedeur Sanders makes perfect sense. It did then. It does now. It did before Derek Carr's injury. Okay. Bottom line is they were interesting long before that. And now even more interesting, if you want to say that, if Shedeur Sanders is there, and we're assuming, guys, he will be there. Yeah. That's the assumption, right? Yeah. That everybody's going to let him pass. Nobody's going to move up. Ben Roethlisberger fell to 11 to the Steelers after Rivers and Manning, Eli went early. It's going to happen. Cam Ward goes 1. Shedeur's going to fall down to 9. And the Saints, will they field? Will they now? And I suggested a few weeks ago, will they now take Shedeur Sanders?
Yeah, I think it's possible. I think we have to unpack some of the layers here to this situation. So obviously this news breaking when it did. Friday, April 11th, less than 2 weeks from the NFL draft. Well past free agency and the NFL owners meetings and the scouting combine. And oh, by the way, well past the date in which Derek Carr had his contract restructured to make it that much more onerous to get out of next year, as opposed to the Saints just taking their medicine this offseason, swallowing it and moving on and pivoting. All of this is very confusing for a lot of reasons, Greeny. Now, here's what I don't know. And the Saints, I think, are about as much of a wild card as any team in the entire NFL for this reason. I think any logical human would watch what's happened in New Orleans over the past few years and say, you have the 9th pick in the draft. This would be a reasonable offseason to press reset, right? To strip this thing down to the studs. Get bad before you get good again. You play in a division that might be viewed as more winnable than, let's say, the NFC East as an example. That being said, what's the end game for the Saints right now this year? Maybe you win the division at 9-8, then you get waxed in the first round of the playoffs. We don't want to chase the middle in the NFL. And yet, what did the Saints do this offseason? First, they did restructure Derek Carr. Second of all, go look at some of their spendings in free agency. Justin Reed signed as a safety. Brandon Cooks, 30-plus-year-old wide receiver, signed. This team still thinks it wants to win. So, now that we have those parameters set, you aren't winning if your quarterback is either Derek Carr playing through a shoulder injury or potentially Spencer Rattler here. Quarterback has to be more a part of the conversation now at 9 than it already previously was for the Saints. Mel's been tabbing it as a need. I think it becomes that much more of a need because you might need the player who has a 0-week runway. Whereas if Derek Carr was still around, maybe you had a half-season runway. Maybe Derek Carr goes through 8, 9, 10 games next year and the Saints are 4-6 and they say, it's time to get the young buck some run. Like the Patriots last year with Drake May, right? They probably waited too long, but still, they did have to wait some time before they told Jacoby Brissett, you are no longer the starter. Is it a guarantee that it's a quarterback at number 9? I'm not totally convinced of that, but make no mistake about it. The teams behind the Saints, Greeny, are saying to themselves, if we're interested in Shedeur Sanders and only Shedeur Sanders, we might now have to get all the way up to number 8 in order to land Shedeur Sanders because you have to assume New Orleans is strongly considering that player. Deion Sanders told us at Colorado Showcase he loves the colors black and gold, like the colors he wears at Colorado. I, of course, interpreted that as he would like Shedeur Sanders as a Saint.
Yeah, and the Steelers wear similar colors, but they don't pick till 21.
Yep.
So, you know, he's hoping he doesn't get down to there. Okay, let's keep going. Rounding out the top 10, the Chicago Bears have the 10th pick. Mel has them taking Tyler Warren, the outstanding tight end out of Penn State. So we can look at where we stand with the top 10 picks so far. Cam Ward at the top, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Will Campbell, Mason Graham going 5, Ashton Genty off the board at 6, Armand Membou going 7 to the Jets, Jalen Walker, Shedeur, and Tyler Warren is where we stand. Field, give me a quick take on what jumps out to you about the top 10.
Here's what I would say, Mel, Greeny. It's so chalky that I actually think Mel might go for 1 for 10 here, right? Like, in this wildly unpredictable draft that is so different than last year's, and I'm not saying this to poke fun at Mel, like I'm saying this because as I prepare for my final mock draft, and it might look something like this, I'm saying to myself, we've been saying for 7 months, no one knows how the top of the draft is going to go, and we've all kind of landed on similar landing spots for players in this top 10. I think the Raiders at number 6 are perhaps the lever for all of this. I really feel like the first 4 picks are going to be some combination of Cam Ward, Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, and then Will Campbell, just given the Patriots' gigantic need at left tackle. I feel like the Raiders at pick 6 are the one, because as great as Ashton Jeanty is, and as hand in glove of a fit as it might be, and as desperate as their running back need is, this is still a team that can find a running back later in the draft. Every GM that's spoken publicly has lauded the depth of the class, like Mel and I have since September, right? And John Spytek, their GM now in Las Vegas, has talked about this all the time. He loves offensive linemen. He loves linemen in general. He talked about that one of his recent press conferences. I have not ruled out the Raiders not going with a running back at number 6. And if that happens, all this stuff could get flipped on its head a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the 2 red-hot guys, Greeny. 2 red-hot guys, when you talk about the top 10 that are being discussed earlier than where they're projected, are Tyler Warren, tight end, Penn State, really a do-it-all weapon. Let's not even call him a tight end. And then Armand Membou, the right tackle from Missouri. Those are 2 guys that are being discussed even higher. I had Membou going 7 to the Jets, right? I had Tyler Warren going 10 to the Bears. We talked about the Jets being a possibility for both of them. Could they both be in the mix for Jacksonville? You think about Warren. Tyler Warren with Liam Cohen. Liam Cohen uses the tight end. Cade Otton had a big year last year, right? You go back to Tyler Higbee when Liam Cohen was with the Rams, had a career year. Go back to Kentucky when Will Levis had his best season with Liam Cohen. Tight end Riggs was a key guy. But they had Brenton Strange, who was a second-round pick a couple years ago. Went from 5 catches to 40 catches out of Penn State, right? You seem to really like Brenton Strange. Went in the second round because he's got a ton of talent coming out of Penn State. They seem to love him. Trevor Lawrence raves about him. Is that enough to say we'll pass on Tyler Warren? Then you get to the Jets. They pass on Brock Bowers. What do they do there? Is it Membou or is it Warren? And where does Membou figure in? They were talking about with Tannenbaum had him at New England. At 4, you've talked about him, and people have discussed him at 5 to Jacksonville.
How about 6 to the Raiders?
We're talking about 6 to the Raiders for Membou. Membou may not even be around for the Jets. Will Warren be around? So it's going to be really interesting to see where those 2 red-hot guys, Membou and Warren, end up coming off the board.
Okay, so let's keep it going here. I'm going to do 2 quick picks here, then I have to take a quick break, and I want to come back and get Mel's take on the pick at number 12. So at 11 in Mel's final mock, he has the 49ers taking Will Johnson, the corner out of Michigan. And then at 12, Mel has the Dallas Cowboys doing it, selecting Omarion Hampton, running back, North Carolina, a fascinating player, maybe an impact player immediately. Some people say they think he is as good a prospect as Ashton Jeanty. I've seen that written in different places in this draft. So Omarion Hampton, a fascinating prospect. Let's do this. Let me take a very quick timeout. We will come back and we will get Mel and Field's reaction or their take on Omarion Hampton going 12.
Got to get loosened up for this debate here, Greeny. This is going to be a good one.
Ready to go. Omarion Hampton to the Cowboys. Good idea or bad? We'll find out next. It's First Draft, and we're back right after this. Welcome back to First Draft. We are having a spirited conversation as we dissect round 1 of Mel Kiper's final mock draft of this cycle. And where we left off was Omarion Hampton, the running back out of North Carolina, going 12 to the Dallas Cowboys. This is a team that obviously has a lot of needs, Mel, and running back is one of them. But there will be some who will say that a team that has a lot of needs, addressing one with running back this early is a mistake. We all know about your philosophy about running backs in round 1. Take us through the thinking on Omarion Hampton at 12.
Well, a lot of people think Cowboys aren't that far away. And, of course, they have had a running back in their past when they had Ezekiel Elliott and also Emmitt Smith. Now, I've brought up the Cowboys as a possibility. Wide receivers a need, too, with Matthew Golden over Tedero McMillan. Matthew Golden is a red-hot guy. When you run 4.29, you have a heck of a year like he did. He became the go-to guy at Texas, right, after 2 very good years. There's Omarion Hampton. Omarion Hampton is a complete back. Make no mistake about it. He's a hell of a football player. Now, Ashton Jeanty. Well, if Ashton Jeanty gets past the Raiders, does he go to Chicago at 10? Very easily could. Ben Johnson wants that kind of back. Had him with Gibbs in Detroit. Why not? Chicago, take Jeanty. Hampton, why not? If you're the Dallas Cowboys and you got Dak Prescott and you got a running back like this who's complete, and they don't have anybody like this on their roster last time I checked, why not? Now, if they passed on him for Matthew Golden, I get it. Golden, CeeDee Lamb, Golden's outstanding, right? Then there's Denver sitting there at 20. Don't you think Sean Payton would love to see Omarion Hampton get past Dallas to go down to Bo Nix and Denver Broncos and help out the young quarterback? They don't have a running back anywhere close to Omarion Hampton.
Yeah.
So this notion that I was battling a few weeks ago with even young Fielding about Omarion Hampton and how far he'll go, he's got to go in the first round. He's a top 10 to 15 best player in this draft. He's a running back. You know my philosophy, but the bottom line is Dallas, Denver would be two great landing spots. And for Genty, either the Raiders or Chicago would be great landing spots for him, who I have ahead of Hampton. I have Genty at 4, Hampton around 10 on the board, okay? So Omarion Hampton for me, I know you're going to yell and scream about it. He's deserving of going this high to the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I just don't see it. So let me start with the baseline here. So
what don't you like about him, Field? What don't you like about him?
I'll tell you it's not about what I don't like. It's about a couple of things here. So I've got him at 26th overall on the big board. That's a pretty darn good grade for a running back. That's still in the top 32 prospects. It's a first-round grade, and last year we didn't have a running back taken until outside the top 50. So a top 32 running back grade is notable here. I think Omarion Hampton is very powerful. He's got very good speed. He's got ability in the passing game as well. Over the past 2 seasons, he has been a busy pass catcher. He did it, as Mel talked about, with Drake May as his quarterback and also without Drake May as his quarterback when the center of attention was on there. I just don't see nearly the same caliber that we see from Ashton Genty in terms of explosive runs, running through contact, breaking tackles, making defenders miss in tight spaces. I see a lot of really good from Omarion Hampton. I just think if you're going to take a player in the top 12 at running back, you got to have a lot of really special. And I just don't fundamentally see a lot of really special from Omarion Hampton. And when I think there is a chance that you could get a much closer facsimile to Hampton a round or 2 or 3 later than you could a closer facsimile to Ashton Genty a round or 2 or 3 later, that is why the gap for me ends up being 22 spots.
Let me ask you this, Field.
Okay?
Let me ask you this. If you're the Denver Broncos, would you take Omarion Hampton?
Yes, because they have a pressing need at running back, and they have done nothing this offseason to address it. And if you want to get cute and go from 20 to 24, well, the Chargers are sitting there at 22. Yeah, they signed Najee Harris, but who's to say they wouldn't take a short and long-term look at that running back spot and say, we have Najee for this year, but we can get Hampton for 4 years at probably the same amount that we're paying Najee for 1 season and feel really good about our present and our future. And for the Cowboys specifically, this team got over 1,000 yards from Rico Dowdle last year, and the guy wasn't even their starter for the entirety of the season. This team has desperate needs at wide receiver. I think they need more pass rush. I wouldn't be afraid of an offensive lineman if Armand Membou was there. I would consider a corner like Will Johnson at number 12 overall. I just believe the Cowboys, to me, would be whiffing on a grand opportunity to address a much more important need at number 12 unless Ashton Genty is there.
I'll just finish this. I'm not going to sit here and yell and say, I agree. I'm not running back guy. For my philosophy, no. So I could see why Dallas would take a Matthew Golden, or they have other need areas. But I'm just saying for Denver specifically,
that's fine.
Denver's a team that I think you say would be a great pick for Denver, but a questionable pick because they have other needs. So when you talk about Hampton for Denver with Sean Payton, to me, that's a no-brainer. And that's one that falls in your lap if he does. Heck of a pick at that point. You mentioned Membou. Membou's got to go before 7, you would believe, right?
I think
he's got to be gone.
Yeah, he'll be
and
gone.
As far as the pass rushers go, Field, there's some that are a little iffy. I mean, the pass rushers in the first round are a little kind of roll of the dice.
Definitely.
I think you at least know what you're getting with these backs, where the pass rushers we're talking about, whether it's Shamar Stewart, whether it's Michael Williams, whoever it may be in that area, is a little bit suspect for that part of the draft in terms of we don't know exactly what you're getting. Like I said, you may get a great player, you may get a bust. We don't know what you're going to get, specifically with Shamar Stewart, the defensive end from Texas A&M.
Totally. I mean, there's some dice rolls for sure. I'm just saying, like, if the Cowboys bypass an important position at number 12 for a running back, Omarion Hampton specifically, if I do the grades this year, Greeny, I wouldn't give him an A in the first round. I'd give him a C+.
Fair enough. Let me run through. I'm not getting an A for moving this thing along as fast as I should, so let me try and get a few more picks in here. At number 13, Mel has the Dolphins taking Jihaad Barron, cornerback out of Texas. 14, the Colts taking the tight end Colston Loveland, who I love, out of Michigan. Number 15, the Falcons selecting the edge rusher Mike Green. And number 16, the Cardinals taking the aforementioned wide receiver Matthew Golden, who ran the fastest 40 at the Combine this year. With the 17th pick in Mel's final mock, the Cincinnati Bengals take Jihaad Campbell, linebacker, Alabama. Mel.
Yeah, Fielding and I are all over the place. We're in completely opposite ends of the spectrum on the Bengals. Fielding wants to help the MVP quarterback Joe Burrow and get an offensive lineman.
Yep.
I got to think, and we got a little wager on this field, it's got to be a defensive player. Jihaad Campbell, if you feel like the medical is okay, your medical staff says, hey, the shoulder is going to be fine, he'll be ready to go by the start of the training camp or sometime this summer, hey, he's a top 10 to 15 guy on most boards if he doesn't have a little bit of a question mark, not a little bit, a question mark with the shoulder injury, which is an obvious issue for a linebacker with a shoulder injury coming into his career, beginning his career. But this kid this year was dynamic, and he's smart. He can be the leader of your defense. You can play him off the edge, get some sacks that way. He can give you up the gut pressure. He's sideline to sideline range, and he covers, and he senses, and he has great diagnostic ability and instinct. So Jihaad Campbell, if we didn't have the shoulder, we would not be talking about him here, Greeny and Field. Yep. We would be talking about him a little earlier than maybe 17, 19 Tampa Bay. Field even thinks we could maybe think it gets down to 32 to the Eagles. Yeah. That's how you view the shoulder. Yeah. But Jihaad Campbell's a heck of a player, and I got to believe the Bengals, whoever the best defensive player on their board is, take him.
Yeah, 17 is the beginning range for Jihaad Campbell, in my opinion. And I think early second is the end range for him. I just do. I'm not a doctor, but this is what teams who have this information have sort of suggested to me. Maybe as high as mid-first, maybe as low as early second. The Bengals should go defense on all but one pick in this draft grade. They're allowed to take one guard at some point in the draft. Otherwise, it has to be all defense. And I might just steal Mel's assignment for doing the grades, because if there's more than one offensive player by the Bengals in this draft class with their 6 picks, I'm out. I'm out. Bad news.
We are rolling along. I can tell you right now, Mel has one more quarterback going in round 1, and you will find out where that quarterback is going as we continue in just a moment. This is First Draft, and we're back right after this. We roll along on First Draft, and we've had some good disagreement from Mel and Young Fielding so far. Let me pick it up with pick number 18. The last place that we were was 17, the Bengals taking Jihaad Campbell. So let's run through a few picks here. At number 18, Mel has the Seahawks taking the tackle Kelvin Banks Jr. At number 19, the Buccaneers taking the safety Nick Emanwari. At number 20, we talked about the Broncos and their need at running back. Mel is going wide receiver with Tataroa McMillan. With number 21, which feels like a quarterback possibility with the Steelers. Do they take Jaxson Dart? No, they don't. The Steelers select defensive tackle Derek Harmon, and so on we go. Still in search of that next quarterback. At 22, the Chargers graze Zabel, interior offensive lineman. Packers taking the edge, Michael Williams. Vikings taking the offensive lineman, Donovan Jackson. 25, the Texans taking the tackle, another O-lineman, Josh Connerly Jr., and that brings us to the Rams at number 26. And in Mel's final mock draft of 2025, at number 26, he has the Rams taking quarterback Jaxson Dart out of Ole Miss. Mel, take us through it.
Another wild card, Greeny and Field. There are some that think he could go ahead of Shedeur. I'm not buying that, but that's talk that's out there, right? So Jaxson Dart has some that think he should be in the top 10. That's why I gave him to New Orleans at 9. Now you bumped him down a little bit because Shedeur Sanders could be there at 9. I'm not taking Jaxson Dart over Shedeur Sanders. I like Jaxson Dart, love Shedeur Sanders. That's why at 9, Shedeur goes to the Saints. That puts Jaxson Dart in kind of no man's land, as we call it, because outside of the Steelers, who Adam Schefter said is not going to take Jaxson Dart at 21, said that about a month ago, correct? If you're going to listen to Adam on that, and we always do, because he's always right, then he's down to the Rams. The Rams don't have to take a quarterback, right? They can help this football team, help that talent base, help them get better, and help them get to a Super Bowl, right? Matthew Stafford has another year or two where he can play great football. He's back, okay? He's a hell of a quarterback. He's a Hall of Famer. He's already got a Super Bowl win under his belt. If you want to help the football team, and go get a corner, okay? Go get a corner. Maxwell Hairston had a great combine. Had a heck of a year 2 years ago, then the injury this year, but he's a heck of a corner. He anticipates. He's spunky. He's got a ton of talent coming out of Kentucky. You want to help your secondary? Go get Maxwell Hairston, right? If you think about where we are right now with the Rams, is a quarterback. Does Sean McVay love Jaxson Dart enough to say, hey, Matthew Stafford is going to quarterback our team this year, maybe another year. We got an RPO quarterback. I love the skill set. Love everything he brings to the table in terms of his mindset as well. Yeah. Do they love it? Does Sean McVay, because this is Sean Lesney, GM, but Sean McVay, does he love, like Sean Payton loved Bo Nix? Does he love Jaxson Dart enough to say he fell in our lap at 26? We had him ranked at 12 on our board. He's the quarterback. He's the heir apparent to Matthew Stafford. That would override a positional need. It's a corner, and we take Jaxson Dart. Or do they take the corner field? What do you think?
I think the Rams would take a corner in this scenario. But I want to go back to something that I think we maybe need to give a little bit more time and weight to because we're now just 10 days away from the NFL draft. Mel mentioned this. I know that our grades throughout the process, and certainly Mel's throughout the process, has been Shedeur Sanders ahead or well ahead in Mel's rankings of Jaxson Dart. We've identified the Saints at number 9, the Steelers at 21, in this case the Rams at 26, as 3 of the more likely quarterback suitors beyond the first 6 picks. It is possible that the team that makes the second selection of a quarterback likes Jaxson Dart more than Shedeur Sanders. How possible? Is it 10% likely? Is it 20%? Is it 50% likely? I don't know the answer to that one, Greeny. But I think we need to prepare America for that possibility when draft night actually rolls around. What we are doing when we are building our grades is first doing our grades based off of how we see the players. That's what our ratings are. Mel reminds people of that all the time. When we're doing our mock screening, it is not just our own rankings of the players, but it's also canvassing the league and sort of finding the average of these prospects and how they're viewed. So on average, I find more support for Shedeur Sanders than I do for Jaxson Dart. But remember this time last year, I found more support for J.J. McCarthy than Michael Penix Jr., and more support for Bo Nix than Michael Penix Jr. Penix went 8th overall, right? So I'm just planting the seed now as we are 10 days away from the NFL draft, that if Jaxson Dart somehow ends up going ahead of Shedeur Sanders, do I think that is how it should unfold? I do not. I've got Shedeur Sanders at 16 and Jaxson Dart at 35 on the big board. Do I think it's possible? I do, and with the Saints as a more prominent quarterback suitor now, I think that dynamic needs to be discussed.
I think that's a really interesting point to make. What you guys do, and I mean this in the most positive way, not negative, is you deal in the consensus.
Yeah.
You're talking to a lot of people, and so you're telling us what the majority of people think. But drafts aren't conducted by the consensus.
Right.
They're each made by individual people, and so all it takes is one person with that pick to like Jaxson Dart better than Shedeur Sanders. And just a very quick aside, Mel, because I love these tweets, it's about how cool the names are, and both these quarterbacks have that. I'm just looking at a bunch of tweets here. One of them says to be a great quarterback, you have to have a name that goes with it.
Oh.
Jake Ellenbogen here tweets, if Jaxson Dart was Tim Smith, no chance he's talked about like this. Both these guys, Mel, have that. Shedeur Sanders, Jaxson with an X, Dart, those are cool names that go with quarterbacks. Mel, how much of a factor is that?
Think about Peyton Manning back in the day. Peyton Manning. And just to go back, how old I am, and Ready, you remember it. Hey, there was a quarterback out of Cal Davis went ahead of Dan Marino. When Dan Marino slid, the Jets didn't take him.
Yeah.
The Jets took Cal Davis's Ken O'Brien ahead of Dan Marino. Okay? So this has happened all the way back in 1983.
I could have lived all day without you mentioning that, and I didn't get to. Fair enough. Well done. As we continue, we will wrap up the final picks of round 1 of Mel's final mock draft of this cycle. We're back in a moment on First Draft. All right, with a few minutes remaining here on First Draft with Field and Mel, I am Greeny. Let's dive in here at number 27. Everyone always wants to know what Mel has the Ravens doing for obvious reasons. And in this final mock, we have the Ravens selecting safety Malaki Starks. And there's a tweet here from Exa who tweets, why is Malaki Starks mocked top half of round 1 and Xavier Watts bottom of the second? Those are, I will, that tweet isn't from me, but it might just as well have been, because they're two players that I see sort of similarly. Mel, why the big difference?
Well, not a big difference, really. I mean, Malaki Starks is mocked in the late first. He was projected, in terms of grade, just forget mock. The grade of Malaki Starks in August was around 7-8 on the big board. He did not have the year expected because they moved him around. He missed some tackles, only had the 1 interception early on against Clemson. But if you look at what Malaki Starks has done, when you can just have him focus and hit on one spot, and you think about what he was able to do a couple of years ago. He had 5 interceptions in his career going into this year. We thought he'd end up with 9. He ended up with 6, right? Malaki Starks has range. He's got ball skills. He was an outstanding tackler, personally, the majority of his career. Yeah. And this kid has a high football IQ. He plays like a Raven, okay? And that's the bottom line here. If he's around, Ardarius Washington's going to be a free agent next year. You imagine Starks with Kyle Hamilton. To me, it makes sense. Now, Carson Schlesinger, linebacker out of UCLA, is another name. I'm talking about, I think it's 26 on my big board. He's a heck of an inside linebacker, off-ball linebacker. Put him next to Roquan Smith, and you got something special going there. So to me, there's going to be plenty of options of just guys that are great football players. Carson Schlesinger, some say, is as instinctive a linebacker as they've seen in recent years, right?
Yeah.
Former walk-on, wasn't even a starter beginning at the first game. So Carson Schlesinger, and also Olafemi Oladejo from UCLA. Those two Bruin linebackers are going to go really high. I'm telling you right now, they are not going to have to wait long to hear their name called. Schlesinger, Oladejo, no later in the early second round. And Schlesinger is red hot right now.
All right, so Field, let me go through the rest of round one, and then we'll get your overall take on it.
Do you want my Xavier Watts versus Malaki Starks stance?
Sure, because I love Xavier Watts. Go ahead.
Yeah, I love Xavier Watts too. He is a true center field safety. This is the kind of guy that's going to play in the back end. He's just going to make sure that no explosive plays take place when you are facing off against in the past, Notre Dame, and in the future, NFL defense or offense, I should say. Malaki Starks just has more versatility. Like the ability, actually, that highlight package for those that are watching and not listening that we just showed, flex just how useful Malaki Starks can also be is like a slot corner, whether it's against bigger wide receivers or against bigger tight ends. I think that's a tool in the bag of Malaki Starks that Xavier Watts has, but not to the same degree that Starks does. So the versatility is why I push him ahead of Xavier Watts by about 30 spots on the big board.
Yeah, and to finish up, Field, the Kevin Winston Jr., now back from the injury, ran great. And I had the opportunity to talk to some people in the league. Kevin Winston Jr. is a guy that may go ahead of Xavier Watts because he runs faster. He's a guy who gets the range and the versatility you talked about with Malaki Starks gives him an edge. Watts had 13 interceptions over the last 2 years. I'm a Notre Dame guy, love Xavier Watts. He's going to go, I think, in the second round. But Kevin Winston Jr., the safety from Penn State, don't sleep on him. He was one of many guys this year that got hurt early on, and they kind of been forgotten about. He's going to be back. He ran great, faster than Watts. I think he goes maybe a little bit higher than Xavier Watts. We'll have to wait and see. But that's kind of the battle. It's not a battle with Watts and Starks. It's more of a battle between Watts, in my opinion, and where Winston Jr. from Penn State ends up going.
Fair enough. I come by this opinion honestly. Ryan Clark's son played in the secondary with Xavier Watts. RC never stops telling me how good this guy is. So that's how I formed my opinion. Let me run through the final picks that Mel has. 28, the Lions taking Donovan Ezaraku. 29, the Commanders taking Shamar Stewart. That would be dropping far further down than Field had him. Number 30, the Bills taking the corner Max Hairston out of Kentucky. 31, the Chiefs, Josh Simmons, offensive tackle, Ohio State. And rounding out round one, James Pierce Jr., the linebacker, going number 32 to the defending champion Philadelphia Eagles. That's Mel's round one. Field, what grade do you give Mel for this mock?
I'd say probably a B+. I mean, it's his final one, so I thought about being lenient and give him an A-, but B+ seems about right. I want to keep him motivated for the next 10 days here before the NFL draft actually gets started. I can't have him feeling all high and mighty. And candidly, Greeny, a couple of those picks late in the first round have me sort of flummoxed, and I don't disagree with them, but that's why I can't.
What does, Field?
No, it's not 29 and 32. Excuse me. Yeah, 29 and 32. Because here's the deal. Shamar Stewart, I had him at 9 in the most recent mock draft, Greeny. Kind of the perfect encapsulation of what this player is all about, right? He might be the 9th pick in the draft. He could be 29. James Pierce Jr., good luck finding an appropriate range for that guy right now. He might be a top 20 talent who could go 30, 32, 37. Anything goes for those kind of players. So it's hard for me to pinpoint where they'll go, which is part of the reason why I couldn't get Mel into that A range.
That was the most lackluster B+ grade I've ever received in my life.
How many B+ have you actually gotten in your life?
I've got many. That's what I said. I'd be happy to get a B+. I didn't get many back in the day. So, but that's almost like the nuclear engineering major getting a B+. It's like, oh my gosh, you got a B+. Is that the way you feel? Because it didn't seem like you were too energetic and inspired giving me that B+ grade. It seemed like it was like a gift almost.
Okay, well
Let me ask one more question, guys, if I could. We have literally 1 minute. So Mel and then Field a quick response. What you did not do a lot of, Mel, is forecast trades at the back end of round one, where I know we will be that night sitting and waiting. Is someone going to come up and get insert quarterback here, Tyler Shucker, whatever it might be? How much consideration do we give to that?
0. Because I didn't want to distort the draft, Randy. I really didn't want to. Who are you going to do? Who's going to do it?
But do you think it'll happen? Do you expect it to happen?
I do think it will happen, but I'm not about to start projecting because it distorts everything. I don't want to keep it. I didn't want to just have one trade or just no trades was better way to go. Just keep it in line. We're trying to tell people where a range of where players will go. That's why I didn't project the trade.
That's fair. But Field, do you expect it? Do you expect that we will see one of these quarterbacks getting moved up for.
I do. The perfect storm has sort of come together for this to happen. 33 and 34, the Browns and the Giants both need a quarterback. Obviously, those teams unlikely to take a quarterback at 2 and 3. On top of that, we don't have this awesome quarterback class where the possibility of a Jaxson Dart hanging around at 26 is certainly in play. On top of that, you've got teams like the Rams, like the Commanders, that I think would be totally comfortable moving back from 26 or 29. In the case of the Commanders, they have just 5 total picks because the strength of this draft, Greeny, is from about player 25 to about a player 100. So
and guess what, guys? If you want mixed opinion, talk quarterbacks 4 through 10. That's where you get some big-time mixed opinion. From Tyler Shuck, Milroe, to McCord, to Dylan Gabriel, who I think is underrated, going down to Quinn Ewers. So that group, I'll tell you, they're all over the place.
I would agree on that, Greeny, very much so. And by the way, I don't have as much integrity as Mel, so my final mock draft just might include a few trades. We'll see.
All right, we're looking forward to that as we get to it. That's going to do it for this episode of First Draft. Don't forget to scan the QR code, like and subscribe to our podcast, and tune in every Monday and Thursday for full NFL draft analysis. Plus, send us your questions using the hashtag #FirstTake for a chance to be featured on the program. Coming up as the week continues, Mel and Field are going to do an alternating mock draft. One pick, then the other picks, then the other picks. This is going to be very entertaining, and we will dive into that coming up on Thursday. For Mel and Field, I am Greeny. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time on First Draft.